Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker betting show. I am your host, George Elek, and I'm delighted to be joined by Oddschecker's very own Andy Holding and a debutant to the show in Paddy Aspell. Paddy, how are you getting on?
Good afternoon, guys. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to getting stuck into some cracking stuff at the weekend, and hopefully, with a bit of luck, we can manage to dig out one or two winners.
That is always the plan. We know Andy's pretty good at it, Paddy. For those who don't know you, haven't heard you on any other pods or anything like that, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I definitely am very familiar with this man at the top of our screen, Andy Holding. I've been listening to his wise words for a few years now on William Hill. So yeah, we've had a great bit of crack together. But generally, that's my gig, working for William Hill. But I'm lucky enough, like today, to be invited on one or two podcasts to try and dig out a winner or two for some of our listeners and our viewers. So yeah, looking forward to this stuff today.
Yeah, we are going to be looking ahead to Saturday's racing, 3 races at Ascot, followed by the 4 at Haydock, as well, looking ahead to Sunday too. Andy, this week feels like, it used to be the November meeting where things really got cracking. The fields went great last weekend, it's fair to say, but this week is where it really feels like it's ramping up with some great action, although the weather isn't really playing ball. Market Raisin was abandoned earlier on today, and more rain forecast in the coming days as well.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate in some respects. So we're having a lot of rain and it's putting a few connections off. But we can't have it both ways, because we are going to be graced by Constitution Hill's presence, aren't we, at the weekend, which wouldn't have been the case had we not any rain. So unfortunately, he's going to scare a few away. And we are dealing with, by and large, small quality fields. But there are one or two other races to get stuck into where we should get a little bit better value. So a nice little mix. Yeah,
really good looking mix of stuff coming up ahead of this weekend's racing. And we'll go through it in just a second. You can find these previews and the Oddschecker Betting Show on our YouTube channel. Fair to say, all eyes will be on National Hunt racing on Saturday. But of course, the World Cup in Qatar does start on Sunday. And there's loads of preview content up on the Oddschecker YouTube channel there. If you want to inform your bets, we've got the World Cup preview with Mark O'Hare on there. We've got videos analysing all of the teams up there too, individual videos. So if you want to find out more about any of the teams, if you want to go on Oddschecker and put your bets on for the World Cup, do go and check out the YouTube channel before, where you can find everything that you need up there. But we're going to start off our preview here at Ascot, kicking off with the 205, the 1965 Chase. Going to point the viewers and listeners in the direction of the Oddschecker app right now. We're going to be talking in terms of the best prices on the market. Use Oddschecker to find those prices. Best place terms, bookie offers free bets, and of course you can get Andy's tips as well as all the other tipsters across sports to the app every single morning as well. So do go and download the app. But we'll start with this 205 at Ascot on Saturday, and L'homme Presse is the 4-7 favourite, making seasonal reappearance after being beaten at Aintree following that mightily impressive win at the Cheltenham Festival. Hitman 5-2, St Calvados 11-2, Do Your Job 20-1, Cool Cody 33-1. Paddy, we'll come to you first, give you first run, given it's your debut on the show. And L'homme Presse, not the only big name on this card who's looking to bounce back from an Aintree defeat. What do you make of the price at 4-7?
I think it's pretty fair. The vibes have been good, haven't they, from Charlie Deutsch? He's very excited about this horse. And look, I know we're going to all go down the avenue as regards Venetia. She's not got rolling yet. She's not had a winner in the last 14 days. She's not had a winner for quite a while. But that said, I looked through her numbers this morning, and plenty of them have been getting placed. But there won't be many trainers up and down the country that will be as glad to see such an influx of rain as Venetia Williams. So that's certainly a positive. And this is a horse I just think he's got bundles of talent, and he's probably got bundles of improvement left in him still. Plenty of raw talent. Look, I know he got turned over at Aintree, but there was a few scabs taken that day, so it was very, very forgivable for me. Do we think... Have you guys heard, will Hitman turn up here, or will he go to Haydock?
I think a lot depends on the ground, doesn't it? It looks like being pretty bottomless over at Haydock. I mean, I don't live a million miles away from that stretch, and we tend to get the same kind of weather system that comes across from the Irish Sea up here in North Wales on the jet stream. So given the forecast is pretty grisly for the weekend, and just what we've had up here in the last 24 hours, I can't see Haydock being anything other than soft. And if, as we saw at market raising this afternoon, it could easily go heavy. So I think they're probably just weighing it up to the last minute. I mean, the easy race is definitely a Haydock, but given what Venetia's horses are like, you say, Pad, at the moment, it could be worth taking on.
Yeah. No, it's very, very interesting. But, I mean, the thing is, even when a yard is supposedly not firing on all cylinders, for me, I do think the cream always rises to the top, and that, I think, would be the case here with L'homme Presse. Just very, very exciting, and I just can't help but get away from the vibes that Charlie Deutsch, because he's not often a fella who you really hear very often talk these horses up, but he's certainly not hidden the fact of the regard. Obviously, he holds this son of Diamond Boy in, and just really looking forward to getting a look at him. And I mean, so far at Ascot, they've got, at the minute anyway, pretty reasonable ground, but you would surely expect that to change on Saturday. But I think he's priced up accordingly. It wouldn't surprise me even if the rain did arrive that he could tighten up even a shade more.
Could tighten up even more. So fair to say, Paddy, not looking to kind of get against top end of the market at all. Andy, anything for you here? Any angles in, or do you agree with Paddy that L'homme Presse looks solid at the top end?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good starting point for L'homme Presse. You know, they're not asking him to run over 3 miles on his first start. He definitely gets 3 miles. Of course, he won the RSA at Cheltenham, but he's got the pace to win over 2.5, as we saw numerous occasions last year. Prior to going to Cheltenham, he was winning over the intermediate distance. The ground's absolutely ideal for him. He loves a mud bath, and more importantly, he's 2 for 2 on his seasonal reappearance. I think he was 700 odd days off the track when he won first time up 2 years ago. And he'd been obviously off the track a good bit when he beat Gunsight Ridge on his first start last season, albeit in fairly modest handicap company before he rose up the ranks. So freshness is not a problem. But Paddy's hit the nail on the head with the yard. I think we just have to highlight that and just warn punters if they are thinking about taking 4 to 7. Venetia in the last fortnight's 0 from 23, albeit quite a few seconds, as Paddy's already alluded to. And it's 209 days without a winner. So the floodgates are going to open, but with that sort of ringing at the back of my mind, do I really want to take 4 to 7 with those stats kind of like staring at me in the face? I'd probably go with Hitman just because I think at the odds as we're looking at now, he's the value certainly if he turns up. And the form of his all-round chase for victory has already taken a boost, hasn't it? With Garlow, who finished third that day behind Riders on the Storm, winning the Paddy Power itself last weekend. He's just as good going right-handed as he's left-handed. He's got pace to win over 2, and he stays 2.5. So with the Nichols horses absolutely singing and humming, it's completely the opposite to what Venetia Williams is at the moment. It probably makes sense to go with him. And, there isn't a great deal between them on the official ratings. So fitness might just be the key there.
Interesting. You mentioned the Nichols yard being in great form. St Calvados is third in the market, 11 to 2. A horse that since leaving Harry Whittington and going to Paul Nichols has had an interesting time of it, finishing third in the King George on Boxing Day, just not really staying the 3 miles. And then last time seen winning by 16 lengths at Sandown in the Grade 2. And then in between that being pulled up at Ascot, not really going on the ground it looked like, and then also being well beaten at Aintree 2 by Fakir Duderi and plenty others. Any chance that this, no doubting St Calvados' quality, Andy, could be the fly in the ointment?
It could be, yeah. I mean, you wouldn't want to write off anything that Paul Nichols sends to the track at the moment, but I think the fact that David Maxwell's on here suggests that there's a project or two further down the line with that combination. I just don't think he'll have the speed to beat the likes of L'homme Presse and Hitman, at this stage of his career. It's a fair ask, isn't it, first time out to beat those two who are better than him anyway. I think Do Your Job's an interesting run. I mean, he's had a wind up since he ran last time out. He was disappointing at Aintree in the same race that Hitman was second. Connections really liked him and they were bitterly disappointed with his run. Clearly that wasn't him, but he's a Grade 2 winner as a novice, so he's not to be totally underestimated, but you need to see something a bit better than you did at Aintree.
Yeah, you would. Paddy, anything to add on this one?
No, I think Andy's bang on as regards to fitness edge with Hitman, but I'll tell you, the only question I have, I think maybe he lacks, I won't say he lacks a little bit of metal, but I think if something really puts it up to him and he's got to pull a race out of the fire from the back of the last, I think we could accuse Hitman maybe of just lacking that little bit of bottle to go and maybe wrestle a race back. So I think he's got to prove me wrong in that sense. If you look at his form, you know, it's very strong, but there's plenty of crossbar efforts in there too, and maybe there could be a couple of more firsts. So, I mean, he has got a little bit of a question to answer, but it's a big opportunity if he does turn up here for L'homme Williams, who has ridden him in the past. But for me, L'homme Presse, I'm happy to take the yard form, and hopefully this can just get things rolling for the Venetia team.
Yeah, let's see. L'homme Presse 4-7, as I say, best price at the moment in the 205 at Ascot. Moving on to the 240, and all eyes here on last year's Supreme Champion, Constitution Hill. Those, I mean, I'll mention it again for the last time. Those who watched this show around about this time last year, of course, were tipped off by Barry Garrity about Constitution Hill at 40-1 before Constitution Hill had taken to a racecourse. A pretty fun few months ensued, and fingers crossed the Constitution Hill lives up to the hype here. Nicky Henderson being fairly bullish in the press, Andy. 4 on is the price. Ahead of Brewing Up a Storm at 11-2, Goshen 15-2, For Pleasure 50-1, and Uchard 66-1. I mean, it doesn't look like much for betting heat, does it?
No, but a lot depends on what price bookmakers go Saturday. I think if he was edging towards 2-7, 3 on, that would have to be constituted as a bet, because, I mean, he's just in an absolutely different stratosphere to this lot. I mean, he should win literally without coming off the bridle. I can't imagine Nicky Henderson and have him going to the racetrack short, because that's just not Nicky's style. He's only going to have 2 more runs maximum to the festival. That every run has got to count. I think he's had, I don't know if he's had a racecourse gallop. I think he has, hasn't he, recently? So he should have had the cobwebs blown away. But I mean, other than Honeysuckle, he's just in, like I say, he's just in a different league to everything else. I mean, Goshen, obviously, you give him a pass for his poor run last time, because that was over fences, and connections are quite rightly going back over hurdles with him to get his confidence back. But, you know, he's nowhere near as good as Constitution Hill. And I mean, Brewing Up a Storm, with the greatest respect to him, you know, he's had a bit of a checkered career in the last 18 months anyway. When he's good, he's very good, but sometimes he loses concentration, and he has been on the floor a few times, including last time out. The other two are just making up the numbers. I mean, it's a perfect setup really for Nico, because he'll have Goshen as a target. Sometimes in these races where it can be a bit messy, you think, well, what's going to lead? Is he going to pull hard? But it shouldn't be a problem. Goshen off a go off in front, and Nico will just literally just sit there in his slipstream until when he wants to press the button. I mean, that's how that. If you've got the kahunas, then you know there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with you having a 4,000 to win one here if you've got the spare 4,000 in the first place.
Please make sure you're gambling responsibly. Paddy, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen far worse 1-4 pokes for sure. I mean, Constitution Hill, all you've got to do is look at the numbers that he did at Cheltenham. Just incredible, really, considering the gallop that went in that race. And, you know, we had some very, very good horses checking out right at the death, whereas, you know, he's hit the line strong. And Andy will know from working with me that I do love these type of horses that really won't impress you at home in the morning on the gallops, but he saves it for when he turns up on a racetrack. And the only thing letting him down so far is that the John Joe horse got beat, didn't he, on his reappearance, who managed to beat him in his point to point. But look, that's nothing that he could do. But it'd just be great to get a look at him. This horse has won on nice ground, but he's also won on awful ground. So there's not really many boxes to tick for this fella, and just be cracking to get a look at him again. He's very, very exciting for sure.
We just have to remind ourselves as well, the horse that he beat at Cheltenham was John Bon.
John Bon, I was going to say.
I mean, look what he's done since. I mean, goodness me. I mean, he made Montmirail and Westcourt look second raters the other day, and he was very good at Aintree. So he's done nothing but other than boost the form for Constitution Hill. And if you're a time band like myself and you get such a big number, you want the race to work out accordingly. And using John Bon as a guide, it's definitely going the way we thought.
we're not going to find much of a bet here apart from the 4 on Constitution Hill, which I'm not going to put down as a Andy holding that. But we might as well talk about John Bond quickly, given what we saw at Weatherby at Warwick yesterday. How good was that? Looked very, very quick over the bigger obstacles, as you say. Wasn't really asked too much. It is now 9-4 favourite for the Arkle.
No, you couldn't really ask so much more, could you? Yes, it was only a small field and he had plenty of time to up his fences. But nowadays, the Arkle, anyway, you only get 7 or 8 runners maximum. The cream often rises to the top, and the other sort of section of novices tend to go for the handicaps, like the Grand Nalu, etc., etc. So that's not going to be a problem come March. I didn't see him make a mistake as such. I mean, obviously, he was just a little bit novice or deliberate at 1 or 2, and he was putting himself right, but otherwise he was absolutely perfect. And Monmorel's a good horse in his own right. As I've said, he's a proper 150 horse over hurdles, and he, like I say, made him look very moderate. Obviously we got the Gordon Elliott battalions and the Willie Mullins battalions to talk about before we start thinking about taking 7-4, 2-1. But bookmakers are probably entitled to err on the side of caution, as they often do. The only thing I have a little bit of a question mark around about anti-post betting, and I suppose it's a little bit irrelevant, but when they do shorten up something like that, they never tend to push anything else out. If there's something shortening up in a day of the rice market, you get a chance to back something else at a bigger price. The overround, has to go that way, doesn't it? And yet in anti-post markets, they're very, very naughty. They'll cut something, but they never adjust the books on the other. So I think you have, if you're going to do that, you're going to have to probably play fair or give bookmakers, punters a better crack of the whip.
Andy holding there, making friends with our bookmaker partners with his thoughts on that. I agree. Paddy, we'll move on next to the final race we're covering here at Ascot, which is the 3:15 on the day. And here we have Edwardstone's return. I mentioned that L'homme Presse wasn't the only horse looking to bounce back from a defeated Aintree with their seasonal reappearance. The same can be said of Edwardstone, who is 11-4 favourite. Time White and Boot Hill both 4-1 in behind. So Scottish 11-2. Frero Bamboo 8-1. Third Time Lucky 9-1. 14-1 bar those. Paddy, who do you fancy? A bit more of an open race, bit of a better betting heat here. Who do you fancy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was a big Edwardstone fan and I stuck with him all of last season, to be fair. I was going to go against him. I was very keen on Banbridge last weekend, but obviously he didn't turn up. I think he's very classy. I was at Aintree the day he was beaten, and I just thought he met a horse who was really on his mettle that day, because he looked fine, he travelled and he jumped, and even speaking to Tom Cannon afterwards, he thought the horse had run his race. He just bumped into a horse really on a going day in Gentleman to Me, and they got tactics right, and so it wasn't disgraced at all. He's a good traveller, he's a good fencer, he doesn't do an awful lot wrong, this horse, but he's got to give away a fair chunk of weight to some very reasonable horses. He's got last year's winner Before Midnight in there, who ran a very, very good reappearance run. Obviously, Time White, I thought, was awfully impressive for the Nichols team on his return. And he definitely looks like a horse, I think, who's still on the improve. And he could be the interesting one here because, there's going to be no hiding place here. They've whacked some headgear on Amula Gold, who really does act round the track. So I think they're going to go a nice gallop here. It'll be a true run race. But Edwardstone, he's very, very classy, and obviously I just hope that he takes his chance. And with a clear round, which I can't see there any problem being, even with the mountain of weight that he's got to carry, he's very, very classy. And I'd like to see him win. I hope he wins. But more importantly, I do think he'll win, despite some maybe young and improving opposition here.
Interesting stuff. Andy, how do you see it?
I think if there's one horse in this field that will leave his handicap mark well behind. In fact, I think there's two, but I think there's one predominantly that stands out to me, and that's Boot Hill. I'll be amazed if he's not better than 140 at some stage throughout this season, or proves that to be the case. He's obviously had 1 or 2 little bumps in the road here, there and everywhere, but Harry Fry's always kept the faith with this fella. Don't forget, he was a good third in a Betfair hurdle here a couple of years ago when he had to overcome 1 or 2 difficulties. But he was really good the other day over fences at Newton Abbot. And I think it's that run that has kind of like sparked a little bit of interest with him going forward. He beat a horse called That's All Right Gino quite easily at Newton Abbot, and That's All Right Gino went to Chepstow the other week and actually hacked him. Don't forget Silent Revolution, who'd won the time before and looked really impressive, was well back in third that day, got beat 34 lengths, and he ran beyond Constitution Hill at the festival. So he was beating a couple of good horses that day in a small field. The time figure was very generous, and the soft ground won't bother him whatsoever. So off a mark of 140, I do think he's particularly well in. If anything's going to beat Edwardstone, it might well be him. And a little word of a positive nature for So Scottish as well. I'm often in touch with his owner, who's a very shrewd customer, Paul Byrne. And I think it's very, very significant that he's prepared to roll the dice on a horse who's just had two runs over fences and won a small race last time out at Carlisle when he made one or two mistakes, but certainly haven't put him off running in a race of this nature. So he's quite bullish with his prospects for the weekend. But I'll stick with Boot Hill. He's got a touch of class, and I think he's the main danger to Edwardstone.
Yeah, So Scottish, probably pretty well found in the market, given connections at 11-2. So Scottish, Rem Mullins, Boat Hill 4-1 for Andy, and positive words both for Time White, but crucially Edwardstone from Paddy. Edwardstone 11-4, Time White 4-1. Move on then to Ascot now, and we're going to talk about a horse we've just spoken about, because Hitman has been left in both the 1965 Chase and the Graduation Chase at Haydock, and here heads the market at 4-7. Itchy Feet 5-1, Manila Drama 5-1. Earn River 6-1. So assuming, I guess, the Hitman comes out here, Andy, it looks like it should be a trappy 3-horse affair.
Yeah, I mean, if he runs, he'll win. So simple as that. He's just better than the other two. Well, 3 if you include Itchy Feet, but we don't really know where we stand with him at the moment, having had a wind operation. Let's presume he doesn't run. Then you'd like to think the Manila Drama could get back on track here, because I was a bit disappointed in the last day. He was very easy to back in the market, so that might have told a little bit of a story about Carlisle, but he did check out quite abruptly, which is a little bit of a concern. But he does like flat tracks, and in a small field when he can dominate, presumably he'll make the run in here over the weekend, with or without Hitman. He could just leave that Carlisle run well behind, because that just wasn't quite him. Earn River, his jumping went to pieces on his last 2 runs. He looked a really good prospect prior to that. Obviously took his chance at Grade 1 cut level and got found out, and then he just didn't really take to Sandown. The fences just basically just overawed him completely, and he got beat. Ended up getting a beat a long way. So a little bit of a difficult one at time of recording to have a dogmatic view, because we're not sure with the participation of Hitman. But if he doesn't go, then hopefully Manila Drama might just have a chance to get back on track.
Manila Drama, the one to side with if Hitman doesn't turn up, might be without the market, without the favourite market as well, come Saturday. Paddy, do you see it the same way?
Yeah, I think I would imagine the Hitman's going to turn up here, because, to be fair, they won't want to take on the Venetia horse if they can land a nice pot here. And plus, Harry Compton is at this meeting. You'd imagine that Nichols is wanting to have his number 1 on board. But I think Andy's bang on about this Manila Drama, because he'd have traded pretty short, I'd imagine, at Carlisle, because he got into a lovely rhythm. And there's no doubt at the bottom of the hill, I thought they're going to have to go some to get this fella. But once he did come off the bridle, yeah, he did check out just swift enough. But there's no doubt, I think, on an easier track like this, getting into a rhythm on the front end, he's a real good fencer, this fella. He really is. And he should strip fitter for that return. I'd have him bang there if Hitman doesn't turn up. But I think if he does, he'll be playing for a silver medal.
Playing for a silver medal, possibly, if Hitman does turn up. But agreement that Manila Drama, the one to look at, 5-1 currently, best price. On then to the 225, the Stayers handicap hurdle, where Mai Tai and Run for Oscar are the joint favourites at 9-2. Good risk at all for Sam Thomas, 7-1. Complete Unknown 8-1. Get a Tonic 10-1, 12-1. Wakul. Botox has 14s, Brinkley 14s, 20-1. Bar those. Paddy will stick with you here. Run for Oscar is an interesting one. Looking at the oddschecker grids as well, as short as 5-2 in quite a few places, but Hill's sticking their neck out and going 9-2.
Yeah, incredible profile, really. This, I mean, an Oscar turning up at Newmarket and landing such a pot so easy last time. Charles Burns, he's an absolute genius, isn't he? And yeah. I tell you, maybe many people over this side of the water won't be that familiar with Daniel King, but he's a very, very good kid who rides for Dennis Hogan, and he's been plying his trade under both codes so far this season. But he's very, very capable, and Charles Byrne, very wise, got him on board to take off £5. But I think this is uber competitive. I do like this mare of Dan Skelton's down the bottom of the weights, Get a Tonic. And Harry Skelton, he's made no secret saying that Dan Skelton team are far stronger in the mare department this year than what they are with their geldings. And so far we've seen of recent evidence that, you know, he's not wrong there. And Get a Tonic, although we've not seen her this time round, she looks to me like a mare who's still on the up, but she's just very, very likeable. She's pitched in to the deepest water yet that she's been in, but I think she's very, very capable, and I think Dan Skelton could have a nice one here. And if you're getting the sort of price that I was looking at earlier, I wouldn't like to see her go much shorter because she's got to improve again, and she's in against some very, very capable performers here, but I do like her. So I'd be happy to take Get a Tonic, but this is a race maybe to watch back because there is going to be a shed load of winners come out of this. I'm pretty sure it's very, very competitive stuff.
Stick the top few in the notebook. Seemingly the big tip there from Paddy, but Get a Tonic 10-1, and also Hills going a fifth of 5 as well, and their standout about Get a Tonic. So 10-1 best price and the best place terms possible as well at a fifth of 5 for Dan Skelton. Andy?
Yeah, I mean, the Roll of Honour suggests this is a race where you need to pay attention to the form and the winner. Paisley Park won it back in 2018. I'm pretty sure Grand Cru won this before he went on to win the Cleve Hurdle, before checking out then at Cheltenham against, I can't remember what beat him. Was it Big Bucks? I think Big Bucks beat him, didn't he, back in the day? So it's a race where it's steeped in tradition, good quality, and this year's renewal is on a similar vein. I think there's a couple of horses in here that could be potentially well in. Obviously, Mai Tai is going to be one of the main focuses of attention away from Run for Oscar, who we know all about now. I think he could be quite well handicapped, but so could Good Risk at All. From an informed Sam Thomas team, yarding in flying form since the sort of turn of October. He was very good the other day when he went to Carlisle. He beat Holstone. He never really had to come out of second gear on that occasion. And when the ground and the mud is flying, he's a really, really good operator. When he won at Ascot last season, the ground was pretty bad. Wasn't so good at Aintree in Grade 1 company, but you know, it was the end of a hard season. He was up against 3 Stripe Life and genuine Grade 1 horses, and that didn't probably quite suit him so much. Good to soft ground, but back on a easier terrain over the weekend, particularly stepping up in trip. I think that'll help him as well, because sometimes he just takes a little while to get from A to B, and when they're going quick in these handicaps, that might just catch him out. But these brush hurdles, I think, will really help him. Don't forget this race is run over the brush hurdles, I think. I'm pretty sure that's the case. So yeah, he's a massive player, Good Risk at All. I think stepping up in trip on soft ground will really suit him. I'm not sure whether I'm right or wrong with that brush hurdle thing.
Interestingly, it's 4:40 on Thursday afternoon, and looking at the odds checker bet history at 4:39, Paddy Power cut from 7-1 to 11-2. At 4:40, Betfair Sportsbook cut from 7-1 to 11-2. So Andy's been getting on because you're Good Risk at All as we've been talking here and seeing.
Yeah, we have thought that sometimes before, haven't we, George? We've literally been chatting away, and that
spies.
There's a spy that's hacking our computer, our conversation.
The good news is that there is still a bit of sevens about if you are quick with Bet365. Otherwise, it's all 6-1, 13-2, and a bit of 11-2 as well. Good Risk at All, and the selection there. We'll move on then to the Betfair Chase, the big race on the card at Haydock on Saturday, and really interesting to see A Plus Tard's return. 8-13, A Plus Tard is a protector at 3-1. Bristol de Mai 15-2. Eldorado Allen 25-1. Frodon 33-1. Someone who will be listening to this and watching this sent me a stat a few months ago that A Plus Tard has never won 2 races in a row in his career. What do you make of that? A stat that seems to me destined to be broken at some stage with the horse as consistent and as quality as A Plus Tard. Andy? Yeah,
I didn't know that. Not sure that's probably a strong enough stat to make me not want to get involved.
The opposite. the opposite. Trends are there to be reversed.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, look, the only thing I think would stop a Plutard not being his absolute maximum best would be heavy ground. He does handle soft ground, as we know, and a lot of Irish horses do. But a real slog in the mud first time out, which could be the case because it's already soft at the moment up there in Merseyside. That would probably prevent me from stepping in at a very, very skinny price. But, he was amazing in this race last year. So providing it, like I say, it isn't ankle deep, then he'd have every chance of duplicating that. I'd suggest this is Protectorat's Gold Cup, arguably, because we know he doesn't really handle Cheltenham as well. He's got good form around Cheltenham, but I don't think he's a grade one horse around Cheltenham. But on flat tracks, as he proved when he won last year at Aintree, he's a very good operator. He's had a wind operation in the interim. The Skelton horses are just coming to fruition. Some of his better horses are stripping fit, and they're doing what they said on the tin. And it's going to be a strongly run race. You've got Bristol de Mai, and Frodon in there as well to serve up a really good gallop. So there's no hiding place. And I don't think Dan Skelton will have any stone left unturned with Protectorat. So he might just be a smidgen of value at time of recording.
So Protectorat would be the way you pay at the current prices? At the
current prices, yeah. Because like I say, I think the ground's going to go heavy, and that's very much his conditions.
Protectorat 3-1 best price with 10 bet, Sky Bet, and William Hill. Paddy, how are you looking to pay this?
I think he's valued for me at Plutard at that sort of price, to be honest, because if you look down through his profile, I mean, when he got gubbed at Leopardstown, it just the way things panned out, because Rachel came round Davy Russell, didn't she? And she sort of hemmed him in, and then she's gone for home. And that has a long, long run in, going to the last at Leopardstown, and then on the way home, and she's been caught on the line by Galvin. And I think when at Plutard, you're dead right. When you look down through his record, with it's there in black and white, 1-2, 1-2. But I do think that there's been so many occasions when he has hit the crossbar. There's been reasons, but I think he's very, very classy. He was absolutely breathtaking in this race. When you see Rachel, actually taking a pull on this horse coming up the straight last year, is just incredible to watch, really. But Protectorat, there's no doubt, is very, very interesting. He's a typical Dan Skelton horse where they're not going to use many bullets with this horse. He's going to be fresh. He's going to travel, and he'll give it a real good go on Saturday, and deservedly so. Joe Tizard has always held Eldorado Allen in high regard, but whether he just comes up a little bit short at this level, it's hard to know. Bristol de Mai, he is Mr. Haydock, isn't he? So it's impossible to rule him out, but look, he isn't getting any younger. And then obviously we don't need to say any more about Frodon, but no, I can't look past Plutard, to be honest. I just think he's very, very classy, and I'm going to make excuses for the times that he has gotten beat. I think generally there has been a reason for it.
Yeah, it looks that way. This is where the trend gets broken here. Paddy thinks at least 8-13 best price with William Hill, therefore à Plutard. And the final race on the card as well, at Haydock, we're going to quickly cover off here as well. Houston, Texas is the 18 to 5. It's not an enterprise price, is it? 18 to 5 with favourite Fontaine Collonges 11-2. Musical Slave is out actually, so Good Boy Bobby 13-2. Truckers Dodge 7-1. The Big Breakaway 8-1. Rapper 16-1. 18-1. Bar those. Andy.
Yeah, I think Houston, Texas is a horse very much on the upgrade. He's been plying his trade at a little bit lower level than one he faces over the weekend. I think Paddy's seen him run quite a few times. I think he's been on Hills Radio when he has won, because I think he does a few Sunday shifts, and I'm pretty sure Houston, Texas has run on a few Sundays. He's a big unit as well, in type of horse that'll slog his way through the mud. Still think he's better than 122. I think he's the right favourite. But if there is to be one that rolls back the years to a degree, and although he is only 9, he seems to be around longer than that. That's Lord de Menil. Paddy was mentioning that Bristol de Mai's Mr. Haydock. Well, this fella's not a million miles away with regards to how many times he's run round this track. I think it's up to and around the 3 and a 4 mark. It's got to be. And there was signs that he was perhaps decaying a little bit last season, and he wasn't up for the job. But he bounced back the other day at Bangor in a very strongly run race. He came from a long way back. necessarily sure that all guns are blazing that day, having watched the way he was ridden, because normally he's off the front and buzzing away. He's made all quite a few times around here, and yet they held him right about the back as if he's having a little bit of a sighter for this one, dare I say. And yet he finished off his race really strongly to finish second to L'homme Presse in a very competitive race. So that run would have done nothing but blow away the cobwebs and got him sharp for this. And he's the only course and distance winner in the field, as far as I could see. So that's got to count for plenty. From the stable now in good form, I think that was one of the reasons why Lord de Menil had a bit of a slump last season, because the Hobson horses were sick in general. We saw riders on the Storm come back from nowhere the other day. So I think at the prices, I'd be tending to go with him.
Yeah, Andy, there, Lord de Menil, the one for him. Paddy, are you in agreement? How do you see the closer at Haydock?
Yeah, Lord de Menil is a very, very solid horse around this track, and he's absolutely bang on. I would imagine that Richard Hobson was tearing his hair out with the sort of year or season that he had last year. It just never was happening for him. Whereas this time round, he's made a really good start, and I'd say he's probably close to having more winners already than what he managed to accumulate last season. And he is very solid, Lord de Menil. Houston, Texas, he's a canny little horse, and he'll only do the bare minimum, but we've seen how forward and how well Nickies have been running this year, and he's probably a deserving favourite here. But I think there are one or two improvers here. There was a horse at a big price I think is worth a mention in Rapper. The handicapper has given them a bit of weight back off that reappearance run. And Henry Daly, he's got a string in real good nick. It'd be no surprise just to see him strip a good bit fitter from that return effort, where in the end he was only beaten just over 20 lengths in very, very warm race. So that would be no surprise. But the horse I wanted to mention here was Fontaine Collonges. We've spoke about Venetia's form, but this mare has won in absolutely unraceable ground, which is also run okay on some reasonable ground, but just had the 4 starts over fences, the book Tom Skoo. It's interesting that they've pitched this one in to such a deep race, having been so inexperienced, but on the other side of the scale is unexposed. So I'm going to take a chance with Fontaine Collonges. This is a tough race because these are really battle-hardened characters, plenty of these, but wouldn't like to see it get much shorter. But if the 5-1 92 held up, I'd be happy to go with Fontaine Collonges and just a 5th start over fences.
11-2, Paddy, with 888 Sport and Bet Victor there for Fontaine Collonges, and Rapper 16-1 across the board. A positive mention there too. That brings our Saturday preview to a close, but we are going to look quickly ahead to the Morgiana over it on Sunday at Punchestown in the 205, where the field, we have no prices as it stands, but we've got Sir Gerhard, Stateman, Vauban, Tiapu, all entered in here. Sharjah Saldia, Jesse Evans, Echoes and Rain as well. Paddy, we don't know at this stage who will line up and who will run, but who do we anticipate will, and who are we most looking forward to seeing?
Well, I suppose I was a bit disappointed when we heard that Willie was going to hold 6 of the 8 entries, and he's pretty sure that most of them are going to turn up and take their chance. But it's very, very difficult to get away from Stateman. I mean, apart from ending up on the floor on his debut for the Mullins team, he's been ultra impressive. Obviously, he was the talk being the handicap lot, wasn't he, called to Cheltenham? And although that race hasn't really, the form of it hasn't amounted to much so far, he couldn't help but only go and win. And then he backed it up, as many don't do, as when they go to the Punchestown Festival. But he backed it up on no uncertain terms, and he beat a good one that day in Flame Bear and beat him well. He showed that he stays further than this. He's still only a 5-year-old, and although some of the others in the lineup here are rated higher than him, I think there is any amount of improvement in this horse. It's quite scary to think that he was competing in handicaps only a few months ago. So I would struggle to go against Stateman here, and I'd say there's probably a fair chance it could go back to the Willie Mullins team.
Andy, are you going to take on Willie here?
Not really, no. I mean, it just shows the unfairness of the game nowadays, doesn't it? Now the better trainers seem to be able to bolster their string by shaking the purse strings around a bit. But Flame Bearer, the horse that he beat, Stateman, at Punchestown, is now in the care of Willie Mullins, having been with Pat Doyle. They've obviously dangled a big enough carrot for Old Connections to let him go. I think he goes novice chasing Flame Bear. He was due to run at 11 last week before being withdrawn because of the ground. But he beat him very, very easily there that day. He was backed accordingly off the back of his victory at Cheltenham. And 3 Strike Life was third as well, and we've already seen him strut his stuff over fence as well. So it was a really deep race, even though there was only 4 runners that day. What they're going to do with him long term, I don't know. Whether they'll go down the champion hurdle route remains to be seen. Willie's got Vauban as well, and of course he's still got the old Sharjah in there. Let's not forget about him. He's 9 now. He seems to be going forever, Sharjah. But we've talked about him before, and when he's on song, he's as good as there is over in Ireland. And, he's probably the only horse capable of giving Honeysuckle a race on his day. So it's an impossible race to be dogmatic about at this stage, because with Willie having 6 in it, he might end up only running 1 or 2, but who knows? But yeah, I'd be in agreement with Paddy with Stateman. I think he's a special talent.
Stateman, the one to keep an eye on there on Sunday. Thank you very much to both Andy and to Paddy for sharing their thoughts and tips with us ahead of the racing at Ascot, Haydock and Punchestown this weekend. So many good returning horses that we'll be talking about plenty over the course of the season. So do make sure that you subscribe to the Oddschecker YouTube channel, where you can find all of those shows over the course of the National Hunt season. And as I mentioned, lots of World Cup previews on there as well, including a World Cup preview with Mark O'Hare and profiles of every single team entered in. The action starts on Sunday, so make sure you check that out in the next couple of days. And you can find this on any podcast platform as well. Do download the Oddschecker app, where you can find all the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and all the best tips that's in the game, including Andy himself and his tips straight to the app every morning of racing. Do enjoy the weekend's racing, enjoy the start of the World Cup, and we will be back again next week to preview the weekend's racing. But in the meantime, please do ensure that you're gambling responsibly.